So let me just move everybody up. So welcome. My name's Kate Gardner. I am a menopause coach. I'm a menopause wellbeing practitioner, a menopause yoga teacher, a hormone yoga therapy teacher, and I would say 12-13 years through this transition. I'm almost 52. And a little bit like Vanessa and I were just talking about, I started to notice shifts in my late 30s. And things weren't right. Suddenly from nowhere, I started to get panic attacks, anxiety attacks. I was literally sitting at my desk one day and my fingers started tingling and I was like, what's this? And I had these panic attacks. And then I kind of got through that. I left my job, moved to Ibiza. I was teaching yoga, living my best life. And suddenly, and this was about 43, I was hit by the most debilitating brain fog. And it literally felt like somebody had put like cotton wool in my head overnight. And I woke up and it was just this really weird feeling. Like I almost felt like something was seriously wrong with me. Like I had some sort of autoimmune. And I couldn't remember anything, and my brain just felt, and I was sort of drinking coffee because I was teaching so much. So I was sort of drinking coffee to try and prop myself up, and that wasn't working. And at that time, there wasn't this big menopause discourse. So I didn't know what was going on. But I intuitively had this feeling that this was to do with my hormones. And so I just sort of started, because of my own horrible perimenopause, I started to teach myself about it and read loads of books and just started on this journey really, and realized how in the dark I was and how much grief, I had to go through, and how this was such a it was like I'd been kind of hit by a bus, and it was such a big deal for me, and I felt so alone. None of my friends were really going through it, and I didn't really talk to anyone. And then the more I started to learn, the more I started to kind of become a bit of a hormone expert amongst my friends. And then everyone would kind of send people to me for different kind of holistic practices. And then I started training in menopause. And really, it's my mission to be able to help women feel empowered and have more clarity and feel more connected to community, local and also online. Because the more we talk about this and the more we lose the shame, the better we feel, and we realize, oh my God, this is normal. There are lots of women that are all going through this, and we have like a sisterhood to be able to support each other. And it's really, really important. Vanessa, you're in Spain. It's really, really important for us in Spain because we're a good 20-30 years behind the rest of the world. But there is hope. Okay, so hang on one second. Okay, so today we're going to be covering defining menopause, the term menopause. We're going to be covering a little bit of the history of menopause. I'm going to give you a very small little whistle-stop overview of the hormone landscape. We're going to cover some of the symptoms, physical and emotional. And then I'm going to share some ways that those who love you, and I don't know if they're watching this with you because I can't see your cameras, can support you more. And that could be, your flatmate, your husband, your teenager, your kids. And, hopefully this presentation will give you some food for thought so that you can kind of open the discussion and talk more openly about this beautiful transition. I'm going to share my 5-step protocol with you, and there will be space at the end where I'll switch the recording off for questions too. Okay. So defining menopause. So the medical definition of menopause is one day, one moment when you haven't had a period for 12 months. So the body plays tricks on us. And sometimes with this, you won't have a period for 8 months and then you'll get a period again. So you're not in menopause. You won't have a period for 10 months and then you have a period again. So you're not in menopause. So it's medically defined as 12 months, no period. That's menopause. One day, one moment. And the average age for that is 51. Although, you can have early menopause and you can have it much younger than that. But the average, just the kind of main average for that is 51. The time before that, when we start to have symptoms, is known as perimenopause. And this can last from 4 to 15 years. And the average age for perimenopause is 44. But you can start to notice shifts. And when I talk about the hormones, this might kind of, a light bulb might come up for you much before this. Now, the difficulty with this is many doctors don't acknowledge even 44. So if you're, 40 and you're starting to feel these shifts and you're starting to notice that things are happening, then there's not a test to tell you that you're in perimenopause. You can't go and say, right, give me this test and it's going to tell you that you're in perimenopause. Well, there is one, but the blood test, the general ones that the doctors do, won't tell you. However, if you're starting to feel like you've got symptoms or things are kind of feeling, oh, hang on a sec, Andrea wants to come in. If you're starting to feel things shifting, and Andrea and I have been discussing this, I'm just going to mute you, Andrea, recently, and you feel like this is perimenopause, you do want to make sure that you have certain tests, and we can discuss this more at the end, to rule out anything else, because there are other conditions that are very similar. So when you start learning about perimenopause, you'll be like, oh, I'm having hot flushes, I'm not sleeping, I've had weight gain. But that could be that you've got something going on with your thyroid or something else. So we want to have blood tests to rule out anything else. Okay. So perimenopause, average age 44, it can last from 4 to 15 years. Okay. Now, post-menopause, so you've had that one day of menopause, no period for 12 months. The time after that, which is where I am, is post-menopause. And this can last from 20 to 30 years. So if you have that day of menopause at 50 and you live to, 80, that's 30 years of your life that you're going to be in post-menopause. And yet a lot of people don't really know much about post-menopause. They don't really understand much. They don't really realize all of the risk factors that go up for our health either. They're starting to, but it's kind of a slow movement. So collectively, we call this the menopause transition. So sometimes you'll be reading about it and it will say menopause and it'll encompass all of these. But generally this transition that we're going through is called the menopause transition. And this is the stages of menopause. Okay. God, I get weird with this little bleepy thing. Like, that's it. Okay. So a little few facts on the history of menopause. Okay. So the word menopause is a Greek word. It comes from men, that means month, and pausis, which means pause or cessation. But really, menopause is about the stopping of the periods, not really a pause of the periods. They're not going to come back. They're going. Perimenopause, they're going to come back, but menopause. And the term as we know it originates from a French doctor called Charles Pierre-Louis Gardin in 1812. So that was the first time we'd heard about this kind of terminology, really. But in the 19th century, as with many other women's health conditions, it was seen as a very negative thing. So women were valued by their ability to reproduce and have children. So menopause was seen as a negative thing, and it was also seen as a condition that could lead to mental insanity. And there's lots of different theories about why we have menopause. There's a genetic theory that, it's not so safe genetically to have children when we're older. So that's why we have this biological cessation of the periods. There's another hypothesis called the grandmother hypothesis, which is that as women get older, it's our place to kind of take care of our children and our grandchildren. So our periods stop so that we have more space so that we can take care of our grandchildren. And just an interesting fact, the only other creatures that have menopause are whales, killer whales, beluga whales, and narwhals. And certain species of chimpanzees have menopause too. I thought that was quite interesting. Okay, so a little very quick overview of the hormones. And there are many more hormones than this, as a few of you know, you've done some of my courses. There are hormones all over the body, and all of the hormones are kind of connected. So if one hormone's out, it will affect lots of other hormones. So in essence, what is happening is in puberty, so if you can just take a moment to take yourself back to when you were a teenager, your hormones are switching on. And in menopause, stroke post-menopause, your hormones are switching off. So in perimenopause, they're doing this kind of crazy dance, but in post-menopause, they're starting to switch off, okay? And what's what's interesting is lots of the symptoms are actually quite similar. So, you know, the craving for space, you know, the moodiness, the kind of the rage, a lot of those emotional feelings can be quite similar in teenagers as they are when we're going through menopause. And for many women, they're having their children a lot later in life. So my mum had me at 32. So I was going through, you know, 16, 17 puberty when she was going through perimenopause. And we used to have, you know, these kind of epic arguments because we were both going through quite a similar, although quite an opposite kind of hormonal shift. So let's just talk a little bit about the hormones. So the main sex hormone is estrogen. And estrogen, it gives us our sexual characteristics. So it's, you know, our breasts, our hips, our distribution of body fat, our curves. It regulates our menstrual cycle. It helps our follicles mature if we're going to have a baby. It helps vaginal lubrication, supports the brain. There are estrogen receptors all over the brain, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more in a second. It helps the bones. It helps the muscles, it helps the skin. So in puberty, your skin's often getting oilier, but in menopause, it's getting drier. And it supports the cardiovascular system. So there's estrogen receptors all over the body, okay? So that's our sort of, it's almost like it's like our sort of sexy hormone, estrogen. It's the hormone that you feel after you've had your period and you feel like you want to go out, you want to party, you're going through your to-do list and you're like, yep, got that done. And you feel really in your flow, and it kind of peaks in your fertile kind of day 14, day 16, you know, and it kind of peaks at that time. You often feel and look your best at that sort of time. And then the sort of second half of the month, progesterone comes into play. And progesterone prepares the womb for pregnancy. It helps our breast develop, it helps brain function, it affects our mood, our serotonin in our brain, our happy hormones, it affects our sleep, and it regulates our menstrual cycle. So estrogen is like this extrovert hormone, and progesterone is like the opposite. It's like a sleep-inducing, calming hormone that wants to keep you in and keep you safe. Because if you are having a baby, then it wants to keep you home and keep you safe, and you know, and that's what the role of progesterone. So there's scientific evidence now to say that in your mid-30s, from 35, progesterone starts to slowly decline. And estrogen and progesterone always work at a delicate kind of balance. There's always this kind of little dance going on between the two of them. But estrogen is like a fertilizer hormone. It makes things grow. And progesterone is like a lawnmower. It kind of cut things back. So if your progesterone in your late 30s, mid-30s starts to slowly decline, then what happens is your estrogen balance kind of goes out. So often in these early stages of perimenopause, you can feel the symptoms can be really, really strong and really erratic because your estrogen sometimes is going low and sometimes it's going really high, and it's kind of doing crazy things in these sort of early stages. So progesterone is your calming, sleep-inducing hormone. Estrogen is your kind of get out there, be sociable, feeling really good, your brain's really on form, that kind of hormone. And then the other hormone that comes into play is testosterone. And testosterone, people associate this with a male hormone, but women have a lot of testosterone too. And this drives our secondary sexual characteristics, our facial hair, our muscle mass, our libido, our bone density, our muscles, and also our mood and our motivation as well. So testosterone is also, it's a bit like progesterone, it's a steady drop off, whereas estrogen's kind of a lot more erratic. Okay, so let's talk about some of the symptoms. We're going to talk about physical and emotional symptoms. And this is just, you know, some of them. There are officially 34 symptoms, but there are a lot more than that. So these are just some of them. And I hope I cover your ones. If not, please do chat me and I'll add them in. So hot flashes or flashes, they're called both. Cold flashes, night sweats, heavy periods, light or no periods, and your period shifting, you know, going kind of like longer, shorter, just changing. The color, everything, you know, can change with your periods. Itchy skin, thinning hair, blurred vision, achy joints, sleep issues, insomnia, vaginal dryness, pelvic floor issues, you know, needing to wake up for a pee, not being able to hold your pee as much, digestive issues, itchy ears, which is a really weird one, weight gain, heart palpitations, which can be a bit of a scary one. Always good to get that checked out, but that is a symptom. A common symptom, increased allergies. So a lot of women find that they're kind of getting like hay fever and stuff like that a lot more, or they're getting this kind of like itchiness or rashes that can become more because of, there's a number of reasons as to why that can get worse. And also headaches. Some women start to suffer from migraines, and emotional symptoms. So for me, I think the emotional symptoms were harder to deal with than the physical symptoms, because they were pretty much, okay, they're not pleasant, but I kind of knew what they were. But the emotional ones, I was kind of a bit more in the dark with. So brain fog, anxiety, panic attacks, memory issues, feeling overwhelmed. So, feeling like things that you did before, like having a to-do list, were really easy for you, whereas now you can get really overwhelmed and just feel just like things are just too much. You can become very sensitive as well to noise. That was another one that I didn't mention. Depression, low mood. There's a word for the low mood. It's called anhedonia, and it's almost like, it's not depression, it's just like a lack of joy. So like little things like, you may have loved to go for a hike and suddenly you're a bit like, oh, can't really be bothered. And you just get this, it's like a low level, just like, oh, I can't be bothered. And it's like you're just not yourself, and you're not yourself. You find it harder to concentrate, mood swings, epic rage. As I discussed before, like when I got this, in my perimenopause, my dogs literally used to go and hide under the table, because I think, oh my God, I just literally just absolutely just lose my shit. And I knew it was hormones, because it was exactly the same as I was when I was a teenager. Lack of joy, I've said. Depression, imposter syndrome. So, feeling like you're a bit of a fake, feeling like you don't want to show up, and who will want that? It's like the critic becomes stronger. Who will want to hear from me? Why will they want to hear my voice? Why will anyone show up for me? I think the critic might be there in your 30s, but I just think the critic just can become a bit of a beast in your 40s. Panic attacks, crying more, feeling more emotional, and also going from kind of rage to crying, just going from so many emotions in one day. And weird things like fear of driving in the dark. That was a really weird one for me. Suddenly I got really afraid, didn't want to drive in the dark. Spatial awareness can get weird, like you're bumping into things and you're driving and you're trying to get into a little parking space and you just like misjudge it. That's a proper thing. It's not you making it up. Tell your husbands and your partners it's a proper thing. Okay. I hope this is of use to you. So they're just some of the symptoms. And so how can people around us support us more? And how can we create like a space to be able to share about this? There's still a lot of shame. There's still a lot of women, like one of the women recently said something on my group. She's like, I'm so glad that I found this group, because it's really not the sort of thing you talk about with your girlfriends over a glass of wine. And I was like, I really want to make menopause something that you talk about with your girlfriends over a glass of wine, because that's what I talk about over a glass of wine. And we should be talking about it because we're all going to have it, every single one of us. So some things that those that we love can do to support us. So firstly, actively listening and validating. And this is like one for me, like I'll say things 3 times and my boyfriend will be like, oh my God, it's like having a girlfriend with Alzheimer's because you repeat yourself. And so I'm like, why don't you just say, I hear you, or just validating what you say. And it just makes you feel like you're not going mad by saying something like so many times. So that's the first one for partners out there. Validate your loved one and actively listen. Don't be like away with the fairies looking at something else. Give her your eye contact, nod your head, show that you're listening. It makes such a difference. Second, overwhelm is real. Women are going through a tough time. They're not making this shit up. They are really going through this. It's a very delicate time for women. And, offering to help in the home, creating more organization. So things like you know, losing your keys, losing your purse, having a little system where, you know, you've got your keys on a hook and they always go on that hook. Bags always go in a certain place, helping out to make sure if you've got children, they're organized and they've got everything done. And it's not just, you know, the woman's role and you're actively kind of helping out around the whole home, or creating like a, you know, chores, so that, you know, if you've got a flatmate, they're maybe taking an active role and they're not leaving stuff to you, because that will just make you fly off the handle. You know, maybe investing in a cleaner and having that support, just so that you can spend your time focusing on you and having the space and the rest that you so crave and need. You know, encouraging your loved ones or your partner or adopting a healthy lifestyle is so crucial. You know, alcohol is a poison, and many of us, you know, as we go through our 40s, we just can't tolerate alcohol, and it literally steals your sleep. It makes your mood lower. It makes you feel more anxious. So if you are having bad symptoms and then you go out and drink 4 glasses of wine, then those symptoms are going to be a lot worse the next day. So, you know, think about maybe things that you can do with your friends that don't involve drinking, that involve, you know, a healthy lifestyle, and maybe exercise together. Create a calm home and think before you react. You know, the thing about perimenopause is it's not linear. It's not like this. It's up and down. So you're going to have months where you maybe feel really wobbly, and then you may have 6 months where you feel amazing. The good thing about postmenopause, menopause, postmenopause, is you reach a new level of balance. So there is light at the end of the tunnel. This kind of up and down that you feel a lot in that early stage of perimenopause does start to level out. And you also get to know yourself more, and you know your triggers, which is really important. So just have a moment. If, you know, if you're going through this, try and find your triggers, and try and find some ways that you can just take a breath, go for a walk, go and get some fresh air before you react. You know, understanding and creating, you know, remaining calm if your partner's behavior does become erratic, which is normal. Avoid taking things personally. Oh, my little button's going really weird there. Avoid taking things personally. If you live with someone going through this, if you're going through it, try to, again, just ground and be present, so that you can really be in the present and not take things too personally. It's not, you know, this is something physical, emotional, it's a psychosocial, sexual, it's absolutely everything is changing within us. Communicate, you know, finding ways to communicate, maybe having like a little weekly catch up and talking about how you're feeling, again, because these symptoms can shift and they can change almost like a wave. You know, they can come in, they can go, which is why a lot of the time you're like, well, could that be? Is that? I'm not sure. And you really question yourself. You feel like, and especially if you're the kind of woman as well that's, you know, been very powerful, been very in control, when things start to shift, it can make you feel very disempowered. And even things like your period, you know, you can guarantee you miss a period, and then when you've got that lovely white dress on, your period comes, and it's like that, even that can kind of spin you out a little bit as well. So learning to kind of be comfortable with not having that control is something that I really recommend that you start to do. Let go of that control. We can't control it. You know, listen and being compassionate, and, you know, encouraging. If you've got friends that are going through this, try and open the conversation and be there for each other. That's really important. It's so important for us to have a community. Okay, so, you know, we will all experience menopause, every single one of us, and everyone's experience is different. So, you know, you sometimes get people and they're like, oh God, in my day, you know, no one even mentioned it. No, it wasn't a big thing. Now it's like a massive thing. Everyone is different. Some people will go through this with absolute ease and grace, and other people will feel like their life is ending. So it's really important that we don't project our view onto someone else. You know, it's like your experience is your experience, and it's very personal to you. And menopause doesn't happen to a woman in isolation. You know, it takes place within a social, cultural context, and the external influences around us actually affect our biology and our psychological experience. That's not my quote, that's Petra Coveney, who's the beautiful lady who developed menopause yoga. And I think this is really important. It's not just going on in here, it's what's going on out here as well. It's absolutely everything. So hopefully you're all still there with me if you're watching this back. So I wanted to share my 5-step protocol with you. And so the first, number one, is nutritional optimization. And this is so important. You know, food is thy medicine, and everything comes back to eating a balanced diet. And the most scientifically proven diet for menopause, and there are many, if you start following nutritionists in menopause, you will be really spun out, because it's almost like to carnivore, to keto, to plant-based, to it's like a minefield. But the most studied menopause, like scientifically proven diet, is the Mediterranean diet. So that's a diet where you eat lots of healthy fats, extra virgin olive oil. You eat, you know, lots of vegetables, lots of fish, lots of beans. And beans are a phytoestrogen, so they're a naturally occurring estrogen, and they're so good for us. And drinking, you know, minimal alcohol, and drinking, you know, lots of hydration, and, you know, our diet is so important. To eat lots and lots of vegetables and load our bodies up with vegetables is really the key. We also, as we go through perimenopause and menopause, we also need to supplement in some different vitamins. I'm also a big advocate of a smoothie, and I take lots of different powders. Things like ground flaxseed, you know, are really, really crucial. They're a great source of fiber and protein, and we need to be eating more protein. So we need to be eating, you know, it depends on the individual, like about 30 grams of protein per meal. If you have 3 meals a day, if it's 2 meals a day, then more. And there's a reason for this, which I'll explain next. But we really need to be optimizing our protein and also our fiber. So number 2 is movement mastery. And Danielle and Andrea have just finished my February program. And so movement, cardiovascular health, and building muscle and loading the bones is crucial to menopause. It's the balm of menopause. And I'm all about like little and often. So doing like little 10-minute bursts of exercise, because women are busy. They don't have time. They don't have time to go to, you know, the luxury of a yoga class during the week where they've got a zillion things to do. They don't always have time to go and, you know, this space and time. But somehow we have to fit movement in. And we don't just have to fit this in for our bones and our muscles. So post-menopause, our risk of cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer of women. It goes up. So we need to be working the heart. Our bones are crucial. So osteoporosis affects something like 1 in 3 women post-menopause. So we have to be loading the bones, okay? And thirdly, we are losing protein. So we're losing muscle mass. So that's why we have to eat more protein, but we have to build muscle. And you're not doing this for the same reasons you'd be doing it in your 30s. So you're not necessarily doing it so you look amazing on the beach. You're doing this so that when you're old, you're not frail. And there's evidence to suggest that, you know, women in their 60s, 70s, when they have a fall and they fracture a hip, their morbidity is like massively reduced. So they're going to like die after that. It's really high. So, you know, this is serious. You know, we have to be really working the bones and loading the bones. So I recommend, you know, that women do short bursts 5 times a week, or, you know, maybe longer bursts 3 times a week. But also for our brain, because what's happening in the brain, the reason why we're feeling low mood, the reason why we're bumping into things, the reason why we are feeling emotional and sad is because the brain seeks estrogen. And there's estrogen receptors on the brain. So on the front of the brain, you've got the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus. And this is responsible for your memory and your brain fog. This is where your brain fog is going to kind of kick in, and your decision making. So when these areas of your brain don't have estrogen, you find it hard to make decisions. You have brain fog. You can't remember. And also the emotional center of your brain, the amygdala, is also affected because of the up and down estrogen. So your serotonin levels and your dopamine, so all of your happy hormones are going to be boosted by exercise. So exercise is a no-brainer, and we have to do it. If you don't have a practice, you need to get one. Number 3 is inner peace protocol. Okay. So as a yoga teacher, obviously I'm a massive advocate of this. In menopause yoga, it's very much about women's circles and very much about connection and journaling. And again, this doesn't have to be a long class. It can just be a 2-minute technique that takes you into yourself, that can just connect you to your breath. It can literally be placing your hand on your heart and your hand on your belly, dropping your shoulders away from your ears and having 3 minutes where you breathe. It can be listening to yoga nidra in the evening. It can be going for a walk with some relaxing meditation music in your ears. But stress and sleep are the 2 biggest disruptors of hormones. Now, whether that's perimenopause, whether that's any hormone condition, they are like the biggest kind of stealer of your hormones. Okay. If you're not getting enough sleep, if you are stressed, that is literally going to like steal your hormones. If you're not sleeping, you're going to want to eat more, you're going to put on more weight, you're going to be more stressed out, your immune system's going to be depleted. If you're stressed, then the stress hormones literally steal your progesterone. So we really need to address stress and sleep. So by finding that inner calm, that relaxation, bringing a practice of relaxation into your life, you will find a deeper connection with inner peace, which is so important. Number 4 is symptom navigation. And this is all about understanding the symptoms. And a funny thing happened for me as I was getting these crazy symptoms and I started to learn about them and really kind of throw myself into understanding everything about them, they kind of sort of shifted. And I know that doesn't happen for everybody, but really understanding the symptoms, looking them up. There's so much out there now, there's so many podcasts, so many great doctors that are sharing, and so many, in the holistic wellness space, there's so much information. So I do think start to see your symptoms as a way of getting more empowered, because they may come and they may go, and start to learn about them for yourself, reading books, listening to podcasts, going on YouTube, following some great doctors. And then I also think that, being open-minded to some of the medical tools that are out there. I, for 10 years, was very anti-HRT, as many people are in the yoga space. They're like, I want to go through this naturally. Until I had such debilitating back pain that I couldn't do anything. And I had to really start to understand and learn what was happening with my body and what low estrogen was doing to my body. And so I think be open-minded and again, learn about HRT, start to understand what it means. It's come a long way in the last 20 years, but also to open your mind to the holistic tools that are out there. Acupuncture can be amazing, reflexology, amazing, even having a massage. Massage can just boost your oxytocin, so it can just reduce all of the stress hormones. And finally, number 5 is emotional alchemy. So this is really about looking at your beliefs. So often what happens in perimenopause or menopause is things that maybe we've kind of pushed down start to bubble up, and our perception of ourselves can start to change. And also our perception of like what menopause is, is it an old lady thing? What is this? I don't want this. And all of these kind of voices, all these limiting beliefs can start to sort of come into our brain. And because we're questioning more and we're maybe not feeling in our power, then we start to kind of go into this loop. So my role as a coach is to really help you to overcome these limiting beliefs and to help you to feel more positive. What is happening to us? Our brain is shifting. Our brain is almost like our neurotransmitters of our brain are all shifting and changing during this time. And so if we can sort of bring our brain into a different way of being and see this as a positive experience where you're going to come out of it feeling stronger and wiser and more connected to who you are as a person, then, that's an amazing place to be. And I wish, 12 years ago that I'd had someone who would have helped me to work through some of these kind of blockages and obstacles. So in my in my 4-week programs, I cover all of this. So basically, you know, my 5-step protocol is kind of weaved in with these little kind of snippets of exercise, lots of yoga classes. We have live coaching every Saturday and live menopause yoga every Sunday morning. So my next program is on the 28th of April. It's coaching, yoga and lifestyle. And I will be sending out an email tomorrow with a little bit more information on that as well. My website is kategardnerlife.com. So thank you for watching. Please do follow me on social media. My Facebook group is Nourish to Flourish. And again, I'll send that out tomorrow. My website is Kate Gardner Life. And my Instagram is Kate Gardner Life as well. So I'm going to stop the share now. And I'm also going to stop recording. So thank you guys for watching this back. And I'm going to stop the recording so that we can open up for some questions.